All right, so why don't we have Dr. Russell take the stand?
Doctor, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Thank you.
All right, good morning, doctor. All right, Mr. Brennan, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Russell.
Good morning.
Dr. Russell, it's fair to say that your opinions have changed between the time when you first testified at the voir dire to when you testified at the trial and then at our last time we met at the Lanigan hearing.
They have not.
Do you remember we spoke about when you testified at the voir dire hearing, you had uncertainty about what had actually caused the wounds?
I did not.
Do you remember using the words like, most likely a dog?
No.
Well, let me remind you, in the voir dire, do you remember the court asking you what kind of animal caused the wound? And you said most likely a dog, a large dog?
May I see that?
Yes, you may. Counsel, page 51, line 18.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Russell, I'm showing you a copy of your voir dire transcript. I'm going to ask you to read it to yourself when you're done reading it. When you're comfortable with that time, I'm going to ask you the questions again. You can look at any part of that you would like.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you now remember when the court asked you what kind of animal you said most likely a dog, a large dog?
Yes.
Do you remember at trial your perspective and opinion changing?
No.
Do you remember you were asked at trial whether or not the patterns appear to be injuries you would see consistent with an animal or a large dog, and you said yes? Do you remember that?
May I see that?
You should may. Trial transcript, page 23, line 3. This is a copy of your trial transcript. Feel free to look at any part if you like.
Okay, I've seen it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you remember now saying that?
I didn't say it.
Okay.
The question had that word possibly in it. I didn't say it.
I'm sorry. You can finish, please.
I didn't use the word possibly.
Okay. You were asked, does this appear as a pattern of injury that you see appear consistent with an animal or a large dog? And you said yes. Do you remember that?
Can you show that to me again?
Yes.
One time.
Let's read it together.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Your Honor, may I make a suggestion, if I could, please? I realize it's crossed. Mr. Brennan and I have agreed that with regard to transcripts and the use of them, I have as well. Given that we've agreed for transcripts being in evidence, can the witness keep the transcripts and look at them?
Do you have an extra copy for her?
The answer is I have a copy, yes, that
Do
she
your
can.
colleagues each have a copy?
I don't know if they do, but I can give mine
Okay.
so that she
Problem
can
with
have
that,
it.
Mr. Brennan?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Is this your only copy?
It is. It's okay. I know what they say.
You have an extra copy?
Which one is it?
Well, you might, I'm going to go through a lot of it, so you might as well give her the whole trial transcript.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. McDermott to make a copy of mine. All right, so that we can continue. You can give yours to the witness for a few minutes, and then when these are done, you can have yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jim.
No problem. Probably going to need. Yes, she's going to do both. They're both yours? Yes. I think you gave it to me.
That's the 21.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Mr. Brennan, Mr. Alessi, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Mr. McDermott will be back with clean copies of the transcripts that I have as part of your exhibits.
Thank you very much.
And
To
the
be
witness
clear,
can
just so
have-
Mr. McDermott doesn't have to do it twice, Mr. Brennan has just indicated to me he's going to go back to the June 18th. So is Mr. McDermott going to copy the June 18th and the June 20th?
I have the voir dire and the trial testimony, so we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Thanks very much.
All right, please. You see the picture?
We're back in session. You may be seated.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm just conferring if with Your Honor's permission, Mr. Brennan, I want to make sure.
Hold on. Only one person can speak at a time. I don't know. All right, so you were speaking to me, Mr. Leslie. I think Mr. Brennan was speaking to his co-counsel. No, that's okay. I just
wanted to let you know what we were doing. Mr. Brennan and I are just conferring to make sure we maximize the chances of the exhibits being right. So I've offered to Mr. Brennan something he wants to consider and look at what he has to make sure we do this efficiently.
Okay. So the copies that Mr. McDermott made are the attachments to the motions that were filed.
I'm going to provide a copy with the court's permission of the voir dire testimony, the trial testimony, and the Lanigan hearing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I did not have Mr. McDermott do a copy of the Lanigan hearing.
I've had an extra copy that I've given
Great.
to Ms. Russell.
Oh.
I'm sorry, Dr. Russell.
Okay.
And if I may, can I write on the top of each transcript which each one is? That way it'll be easier for Dr.
Is there a problem with that, Mr.
No
Leslie?
problem at all.
Okay.
May I again approach the witness?
Yes.
May I speak, Your Honor?
Yes.
Dr. Russell, I'm handing you two documents. You have a third. The one before you is a transcript of the last hearing called the Lanigan hearing that you attended.
Okay.
This is a copy of your voir dire testimony. I've noted it on the top right for you, and also trial testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
I had asked you if you had expressed any uncertainty in the past about your opinion as it relates to the opinion you gave at the Lanigan hearing, at the last hearing, whether your position has changed or evolved is what I'm getting at. And you said that your position has not changed. Is that right?
That's correct.
You were asked at the trial about the injuries and how you think they happened. I want you to turn to the trial transcript. If you'd turn to page 19, line 21. Page
Line-
19, line 21. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
So the page number is here?
Yes.
And then line would be... Okay. Sorry. My apologies. This one is the trial. Okay. Do you recall at the trial you were asked about the injuries and you said, I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog because of the pattern of injuries? Do you remember saying that?
That's not here in front of me.
But I'm asking you, do you remember saying that at the trial, that you believe the injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog?
Something to that effect, yes.
Okay. And when you said that, you used the word possible because you weren't certain, were you?
Can you show me where that is?
Well, I'm asking a question, not asking about the transcript. The reason why, when you were asked and you said it was by an animal, possibly a large dog, is because you were uncertain.
You know, Mr. Brennan, I think I explained that before, that in medicine there are no absolutes. And that's what, physicians are ingrained to think, is there are no absolutes in medicine. So that's why I expressed it that way. But
Yet
I was certain that it was a dog.
Yet you were testifying as an expert witness, weren't you?
Yes, I understand that, but I was thinking like a doctor.
I see. And you understood as an expert witness that you were asking the jury to rely on your opinion. You were trying to be as accurate as possible, weren't you?
Yes, I usually do, yes.
You were trying to be precise in your testimony under oath, weren't you?
Yes, and I don't see a difference really between those.
And when you use the word possibly a large animal, that's different than an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
In this witness's view. She can answer that.
That's not what the transcript says that he's referring to.
So he's not asking about the transcript. I'm going to allow the question.
Would you like me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
When you chose the words during your testimony to precisely describe what you thought, and you said possibly a large dog, that is different than to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, isn't it?
No, I don't think so.
You were asked whether or not you could tell what type of animal left these marks, and you said you couldn't with 100% certainty. Isn't that true?
With 100% certainty, that's correct.
And the reason why you don't have certainty when you first testified is because there really is no methodology in identifying dog bite wounds, is there?
But that's incorrect.
I see. When you talk about methodology, is there any standard you're comparing your comparisons to?
There are multiple published peer-reviewed articles that describe what dog bites and dog injuries look like.
Is there any standard that you use? Is there any particular things you look at with specificity that you compare to a standard model?
The pattern.
Mm-hmm. The standard model of patterns, where do you get that from?
Pattern recognition is used throughout medicine. And, it's something that I have been trained on since actually before medical school, but certainly in medical school.
Pattern recognition, you understand, is different than a standard of comparison. You understand there's a difference between those two things, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. We'll talk about pattern recognition analysis in a minute. But what you're saying is that there's a methodology in identifying dog wounds. I'm asking you, where does that standard come from?
It comes from multiple published peer-reviewed articles.
Okay. Tell me one.
De Munich.
I'm sorry?
De Munich. We talked about that one last time.
The gentleman who studied human teeth.
No, he wrote about dog bites.
Okay. And what's the name of the article that you've relied on?
The name of the article, I have to refer to my report, but it's something to the effect of forensic evaluation of...
Do you have any specific memory about what you're relying on as a standard of comparison to identify dog bite marks?
Yes.
Okay, share that with us.
Again, the standard would be what the wound looks like, and the pattern recognition that goes along with it, along with the configuration of the wounds. It's a multifactorial process.
I'm trying to have you assist us in distinguishing between pattern recognition analysis, which we're going to get to, and when you're looking at a wound, the standards in the science, the standards, the methodology you would actually use to look at it and see if there's points of comparison, to see if there's similarity. What standard are you working with?
I'm not so sure I understand what you mean by standard then, because I know how I evaluate wounds.
You have personal experience where you've treated dog wounds, and you look at it, and you're simply deciding whether or not to you this looks similar. You're giving your personal aside, aren't you?
I actually find that offensive.
Oh, okay. Well, is that what you're doing?
No.
So if you're comparing it to an actual science, a standard, a methodology, I want to learn that methodology from you. So what I'm asking you is, tell us, where does that come from, the methodology where you have a point of comparison, where you look at a wound and you compare it for similarities to another item?
There are several published peer-reviewed articles that describe what to look for, how to observe, evaluate, and then sometimes treat wounds, dog bite wounds.
Okay.
There are, several authors that have published similar things. And in terms of there being an organization that says, here is the standard for dog bite wounds,
Right.
I don't think that there is one.
Well, when you say you don't think there is one, if you're an expert in this field, you would know that there is not one, is there?
There is not one that I know of, correct?
Well, you're not guessing there might be one you don't know of.
I don't know of any published standard by an organization.
So it'd be fair to say, when you are giving an opinion, what you personally believe to be a dog bite wound, there is no standard in dog bite science that shows you what the standard is. There's nothing to compare it to.
Again, it's based on a combination of the experiences that I've had over the last 30 years, observing, evaluating, and treating dog bite wounds, plus the numerous articles that I have read on dog bite wounds, their characteristics, morphology, patterns, and other things like complications, etc.
Okay, so to get back to my question, I know that you're using your experience and your memory, but there is no standard of comparison. There's no methodology that is accepted as a practice.
I disagree.
Okay. Can you share with us one of those articles that you've been relying on to combine with your personal experience to come to conclusions in dog bite analysis?
Well, there's the Munich that we talked about.
I didn't talk about. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, certainly.
Okay, please.
Okay, would you like to go through it together?
I'm asking you to tell us about what you're basing your opinion on, and you said it's Munich, so I don't know much about
Okay,
it.
so that's one of them.
Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, in that article, the authors described a fatal case, but also described what some of the characteristics are in dog bite wound cases. What types of wounds you see, their appearance, their distribution, their configuration, the different aspects like that. Many of them are parallel. Things that would affect the appearance of wounds that physicians know about, such as elasticity of skin and other ways that wounds can be distorted from one to another wound. So you have to know a little bit about wound characteristics, and basically things to look for in the forensic evaluation of dog bite wounds.
Did that article lay out a standard of methodology?
I guess I don't understand what you're getting at.
Rather than having a particular case study where that article talks about a person that was attacked by a dog and deceased, correct?
In that case,
Yes.
however, it referenced.
And
I'm
it's,
sorry, Your Honor, if you could finish the question.
Yes. I'm going to let her finish.
please.
And Mr. Lessie, for objections, just simply objection.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I will, thank you.
Okay. That article, it was a case report, but it was also a review of previous literature.
Okay.
So in the review of the previous literature that had been published, they came up with recommendations. So yes, there are recommendations in that article.
In that article, it talked about a wound to the neck where the deceased bled to death, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It didn't talk about pattern recognition analysis
I
in that article.
disagree.
Okay. And did it talk about a standard of practice of methodology?
Recommendations.
No, but that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, did it have a standard, a methodology that it discussed?
These were authors that were practitioners, and I don't believe they were in a position to create a standard.
In fact, you can't point to one place where there is a readily accepted standard in the dog bite community for identifying dog bites. You can't point to one article, journal, book.
That's correct.
And so because there is no methodology or standard for you to look at, it involves a great deal of your subjective opinion based on your experience treating dog wounds, doesn't it?
You know, with all due respect, Mr. Brennan, I'm not somebody that just came in off the street. I have at least 30 years as a physician, and I use that information in helping me form my opinions about wounds. I've seen all types of wounds.
Okay, so my question was, because there is no methodology, because there is no standard comparative analysis, you need to rely almost virtually on your personal experience treating wounds.
No, I believe you're again mischaracterizing it. I'm relying on my personal experience plus what I've learned from these numerous articles.
And so, because there is no methodology and standard to compare to, you've introduced the idea that you have used a process known as differential diagnosis.
That's one of the processes used.
And as far as differential diagnosis, what that suggests is when, as a doctor or a person looking at symptoms, you try to rule out other conditions that have similar symptoms.
Correct.
Okay. And so you said, although that's traditionally used in a doctor assessing a cause of a patient's symptoms, you're using that in identifying dog bites, this differential diagnosis you speak of, right?
I used it to assist me, yes.
Okay. And so when you're using differential diagnosis, it means that there are many other ways or reasons why the same symptoms can occur.
Not always. Not always. It could mean that there's just one or two other conditions that would resemble this,
Okay.
but it's a process that a responsible physician would go through.
And in this case, you went through differential diagnosis to exclude other causes of these abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
I did.
If you had used your training and experience and you were certain to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that these were dog bites, you would not need to go through differential diagnosis.
Oh, that's so incorrect.
Okay.
I'm not perfect. I'm not 100% perfect human being, and so so I have to, as a responsible physician, in every case, go through a differential diagnosis to make sure I'm evaluating and treating the right thing if there's treatment involved.
When you chose to go through differential diagnosis, you recognized that these abrasions could be caused by a lot of different mechanics of injury, didn't you?
I considered that they could have been caused by others, but I went through the process.
Well, you were uncertain, weren't you?
No.
Yet you went through this process of differential diagnosis anyways.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And when you did that, you decided that you should focus on car accident.
No, I didn't focus just on car accidents.
Well, what other subjects did you focus on in differential diagnosis other than car accident?
Could these have been self-inflicted, for instance?
You went through that process?
I did.
I didn't see that anywhere in your report whatsoever.
It's in my head. I didn't write it down.
Well, aren't you supposed to report the process you go through before coming to conclusions? Isn't that why you wrote a report in discovery and disclosure?
Yes, but
Okay. Is there anything else in your head that you thought about that you didn't put in your report or tell anybody? So we have car accident, we have suicide, we have dog bite. What else did you think of in your differential diagnosis?
well, I thought, could it possibly be road rash?
Okay. What else did you think?
Oh, I don't remember all the things I thought of at the time, but it wasn't a very large list, but it was a list, and it was a differential diagnosis.
Well, if it was important enough to think about and distinguish and go through differential diagnosis, can't you remember what it was that you thought it could have been the cause other than suicide, road rash, car accident?
Well, of course, there are some things I thought of and immediately ruled out. Were these stab wounds inflicted by someone else? No.
Okay.
So the list There was a list that I went through in my head. Would it be worth writing down? No, I don't think so.
Well, was there any other significant causes that you went through and vetted through differential diagnosis that you didn't write down?
Not that I remember at this time.
And that's why it helps to write it down. Okay. So one of those causes of these abrasions that you went through differential diagnosis for was car accident, wasn't it?
Yes.
In fact, when you first met the defense attorneys, you had an interest in this case, didn't you?
I thought I could clarify the issue of what those wounds were caused by.
So you were learning about information about the case publicly before you got involved in this case,
No.
didn't you? Well, you knew there was an issue.
I heard, yes, I did know that there was an issue. I saw something in the Boston Globe, and Mr. Brennan, I wasn't following the case at all. I don't even subscribe to the Globe for information about this general region.
You don't have to be defensive about it. I'm just asking you.
Okay.
You knew
Just
enough
clarifying.
that you wanted to get involved, and you made some phone calls to offer your services.
I didn't want to get involved, but I thought that I should.
I see. And so you learned enough through your study or the Boston Globe or television that you knew generally that there was an issue about the abrasions, correct?
I knew there was a question, yes.
You knew that the defense was claiming that a dog caused those injuries.
I wasn't even sure who was claiming what at that point.
So you didn't know much about anything, but you still made phone calls to introduce yourself to get involved in the case?
Again, I know that there are very few people in this country that have the combination of experiences that I do, and I thought that I could just clarify the issue and maybe, help people move along in the case.
Before you decided that you were going to offer your services, what did you know about the case?
I knew that a police officer had died. I was a former police officer, so I knew a police officer had died. And I knew that there was a trial, and I didn't know details really. I just knew that I believe I read that there was something about a car accident versus dog bites. That's about all I knew about the case.
Had you seen any photographs?
No.
And so just generally knowing that there was an issue, you thought you could help because of the word dog bite in your experience?
Correct.
Okay. So when you ruled out motor vehicle accident, is it fair to say that your perspective was a motor vehicle accident would have caused injuries to the other parts of the body, and that's why you considered car accident as not part of the cause of these abrasions?
That was not the only reason.
That was one of the reasons?
Yes.
Did you look at the wounds and you thought based on the accident there would have been broken bones or other injuries?
That was one of the reasons.
Okay. So based on those two reasons and other reasons, you decided to exclude car accident as the cause of these wounds, correct?
Correct.
And when you made that decision to do that and exclude car accidents, you didn't really have the experience in car accidents to decide whether a car accident was the cause of these injuries, did you?
Mr. Brennan, I've seen thousands of car accident victims through my emergency medicine career, so I had plenty of experience.
Had you ever been trained as an accident reconstructionist?
No, I'm trained as a physician to treat car accident victims.
But that's not what I asked. What I asked you is, you ever been trained as an accident reconstructionist?
No.
Have you ever taken classes and certifications in accident reconstruction?
No.
Have you ever gone to a scene of an accident and been asked to give your opinion and help reconstruct the accident?
No.
Have you ever served as a witness in court as an accident reconstructionist?
No.
In fact, when you decided that this accident couldn't happen, you hadn't even read the investigative reports, had you?
No, I didn't decide that an accident didn't happen. What I decided was that those injuries were not from a motor vehicle accident.
When you first gave your opinion in this case, she was done.
Hold on, Mr. Leslie. Next question, please.
When you first gave your opinion in this case, excluding car accident, you had not even read the investigative reports in this case, had you?
That's correct.
Yeah. And when you were asked about materials that you reviewed to give your opinions, you said you were just trying to focus on the wounds and you hadn't read those reports, right?
That's correct.
Have you read the reports to
Yes.
date? You now have read the reports?
Yes.
Okay. When you excluded the car accident, did you know anything about this collision between the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe? Did you know anything about it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Can you answer that question, Dr. Russell?
Did I know anything about...
Did you know anything about how it happened?
I was, somehow I knew that, well, I believe I knew that the car was backing up. That's what I was, somehow I got that information.
So
The
when
car
you were
backed up.
excluding the collision in this differential diagnosis, did you know how fast that Lexus was going back when it struck Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Do you know how far it traveled when it hit Mr. O'Keefe?
Objection, Your Honor.
So it's a question, the question's proper. Let's see if she can answer it. She may not be able to answer it as asked.
Do you know how far the Lexus traveled backwards when it hit Mr. O'Keefe?
Your Honor, I'm objecting to the
I
the assumption in
understand.
it.
I understand, counsel. Can you answer that question as asked, Dr. Russell?
As asked, no, I don't know.
When you excluded this collision as differential diagnosis, did you know the angle of the collision between the car and Mr. O'Keefe?
I'm going to see counsel at 7.
May I?
Yes.
When you engaged in differential diagnosis, excluding a car collision as the cause of these abrasions, did you know or learn any information about the angle of the strike between the Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
Do you know whether or not the person, John O'Keefe, who had these abrasions on his arm, do you know if that person used his arm in any way to defend himself from an oncoming vehicle?
I considered that.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. And in considering that, did you consider the body position of John O'Keefe?
Oh, yes. I considered various possibilities.
Okay, what was his body position at the time the car allegedly collided with him?
Objection, Your Honor.
Who used the word allegedly?
What was his body position?
I considered several possibilities. I considered if he was standing, I considered if he was kneeling or sitting or even lying down. I considered multiple possibilities.
Was he standing?
I don't know, but I considered all of those possibilities.
Was he kneeling?
I don't know.
Was he lying down?
I don't know.
So you considered all these things, but you have no information, fact, or understanding of what body position he was, do you?
I went through the process of what the wounds would look like in those various positions.
I see. So if John O'Keefe was trying to defend himself, pulling his arm up to brace himself, what would the injuries have looked like?
Well, if they penetrated his clothing, if there was penetration of his clothing, from broken parts, for instance, they would have been quite irregular. There would not have been multiple parallel abrasions and punctate wounds that were seen in those pictures.
How do you know that?
From my many years of experience.
Okay. Did you do any comparison analysis of the broken tail light in Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
Actually, eventually, I did.
Before you gave these opinions, did you?
I didn't need to, because I've seen thousands of accident victims.
Every accident is dynamic and changes, isn't it?
Yes, but I also had that in consideration. That's why people train for the number of years that I trained.
Every accident is different, isn't it?
Yes, probably.
And so you can have a number of people in an accident, and they can have different injuries from the same accident, can't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? If a car drives down the street and runs into 20 people, they may all have different injuries.
I agree.
Same car.
I agree.
Might be the same speed. But they could hit people differently. Some people, unfortunately, they could kill, right?
Yes,
Some people could be catastrophically injured but still alive.
correct.
Some people could have scratches and bruises.
Correct.
Some people could be in that type of situation, bounce off the car and escape without a scratch.
Possibly, yes.
Right. So there's no science or standard when you say car accidents would have had a certain result. The truth is you don't know.
I disagree with you.
Okay. And so when you were excluding these causes, you have no idea his body position or angle, correct?
I went through various scenarios in my head.
But I'm asking you, not the scenarios in your head, Dr. Russell. I'm asking you about detail, fact, science, okay? I'm asking you, do you have any idea the position of John O'Keefe's body when he allegedly was struck by the car?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow it.
I considered multiple scenarios.
Tell me the facts you have. Tell me the facts you have. You can tell us how is his body postured on fact. What facts do you have?
Again, I considered multiple scenarios.
When you... Did you go to the scene of where Mr. O'Keefe was found lying on the ground? Did you go and visit the scene?
No.
Did you take and look at photographs of the scene?
I looked at some photographs.
What did you see in those photographs?
They were it was very difficult to see much useful information in the photographs.
When you're engaging in differential diagnosis and you're excluding causes of abrasions to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, wouldn't it be important to either go to the scene or look at clear photographs so you could see all the debris and the land and the turf and see what it looked like? Wouldn't that be important?
No, in the 30 years of emergency medicine experience I've had, I've never gone to the scene of a car accident victim that was brought into the emergency room.
And you've never gone into court and testified as an accident reconstruction expert?
A reconstruction expert? No,
You've
but I've
never-
testified about vehicle accidents.
And you've never gone to court and
Victims.
testified as a dog bite expert before this case? Yes?
I was never asked.
Right. And so when you say what you used to do, you treated people who came in with injuries. I'm talking about when you're going to exclude something as a cause. I'm asking if you have any experience in actually going out and looking at the facts and using science to exclude something fairly.
I used medical science.
Do you know what the ground looked like where Mr. O'Keefe lay that morning?
There was snow.
You know how many inches of snow were under his body?
Under his body?
Yeah.
No.
Do you know what the ground was? Do you know if it was smooth like a turf football field or frozen jagged like dirt tends to do in the Northeast during the cold winter?
I considered several different possibilities: grass, dirt, asphalt. So I considered several different possibilities to see in my differential diagnosis.
You considered all these different possibilities, but you never even went and looked at the scene to see what it looked like, did you?
I didn't have to.
Do you know if there was twigs or roots or a brush nearby?
I don't know.
Do you know if there was a fire hydrant nearby?
There was a fire hydrant nearby.
Do you know if there was a curb nearby?
That I don't know.
So you have no idea, really, other than a fire hydrant, what this area of impact or alleged impact looked like, do you?
Well, again, a curb would not have caused those wounds, so that's irrelevant.
You have no idea.
I disagree.
Okay. Did someone tell you what it looked like?
No.
Okay. You said that you ruled out car accident or collision in part because there were no broken bones. Yes?
In part.
And we've agreed.
Except for no skeletal broken bones.
And we've agreed that car accidents are a dynamic process. Not all car accidents result in broken bones, do they?
That's correct.
It depends on how and where and a number of other factors in the collision. Yes?
That's why it was only one of the factors I used.
Well, it's one of the factors you excluded. Do you know the difference in force between a head-on collision and a side swipe?
I have a general idea.
Is there less force when someone is hit on the side of the car as opposed to being run over?
As opposed to being run over?
Yeah.
Generally, yes.
Right. And I'm sure in your thousands of treatments, you have treated people in the hospital who have come in contact with a car who did not have broken bones.
Oh, yes.
Plenty of times.
Excuse me?
Many times.
Yes, but they weren't dead.
What's that?
They were not dead.
Right. Okay. Well, you don't know when Mr. O'Keefe died that morning, do you? Do you know what time he died?
I have a range.
You didn't think he died from the abrasions on his arm, do you?
No, he did not die from the abrasions.
Okay. He died from a break in the back of his skull from hitting the ground, right?
Oh, he died from a skull fracture and brain injury and
Yes.
hypothermia.
Hypothermia.
Yeah,
Okay.
not from an abrasion to his skull.
Right. The abrasion for his arm had nothing to do with his death, did it?
It did not cause the death.
Okay. And so, is there a difference between the force when a car hits somebody directly on or hits them on the side?
Generally, yes.
Right. And you've seen many times somebody has been in contact with the motor vehicle with no broken bones, many times.
I have seen that, yes.
I mean, there's a difference between being run over and hitting the side of a car, isn't there?
That's correct.
So if someone didn't hit them, they just clipped them, that might be different than being run over in the middle of a crosswalk in the middle of the car. Yes?
Yes, that'd be correct, but you have to put it in context.
Now, you said in addition to your experience treating injuries, you also have experience as a police officer.
Yes,
Yes. And you responded to many car collisions as a police officer, didn't you?
I did.
And when you respond to car collisions, whether it's a pedestrian or another car, there are certain things as a detective you detect that are in the street, right?
As a detective?
Yeah, a detective or a police officer, as you go to a scene and there's a collision, you certainly see things often as
Yes.
a result of the collision, don't you?
Yes.
Tell us some of the things that you'll see as a police officer after a collision. What do you see?
After a collision, you oftentimes see debris from the car.
Right,
From
debris
vehicles,
from the car.
yes.
You can see rubber, right?
Probably, I don't know if I have, but yes.
Sometimes metal pieces, parts of the car.
Right.
And sometimes when there's a collision, maybe often, you see glass, don't you?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, glass breaks when a car collides with something, oftentimes, doesn't it?
Yes.
And so when you were doing this, engaging in this differential diagnosis, did you consider the circumstances, the physical evidence at the scene from where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
I considered the possibilities, yes.
Okay, well, there's a phrase, getting knocked out of one's shoes. You've heard that phrase, right?
I've heard the phrase.
Well, you've heard the phrase in relation to car collisions, haven't you? A person getting knocked out of their shoes.
And other things, yes.
Yeah, but not other things. We're talking about car collisions.
Okay.
That's what we want to talk about today.
Okay.
You've heard the phrase knocked out of one's shoes in car collisions, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes, because the force is so great when a car hits a body, it moves the body, and the shoe from friction on the ground can sometimes be left behind. Yes?
I don't know the actual causation, but yes.
Well, you did know in your review of this case that at the very area where that car backed up and Mr. O'Keefe was found, one of his sneakers was found next to the curb on the street. You know that, don't you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Are you aware of that fact?
No.
Okay, next question.
You were never given any of the information, the physical evidence at the scene where Mr. O'Keefe was found to help you engage in this differential diagnosis?
I eventually saw reports.
So you do know. You do know about the sneaker.
I also, well, I don't know that. I don't know where the sneaker was found, no.
Well, what do you know about the sneaker? It sounds like you know a little bit about the sneaker. Tell us
No,
what you...
I know that in hypothermia there's a condition called paradoxical undressing, where people are sometimes are found without their clothes and shoes,
Was
because
Mr.
and in this case there was hypothermia.
Do you have any opinion that Mr. O'Keefe undressed his shoe before he died?
I have no opinion about that.
Do you have any information, evidence to support such a comment like that?
I'm just advising you that there is a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, so that is possibly a cause.
In that phenomenon, does somebody take off one shoe and leave all their other clothes on?
It's possible they
Yeah.
could, yeah.
Right? And you have a case that you've seen
No,
just like that?
I have not.
No. Okay. And so, in this case, at what point did you learn that Mr. O'Keefe was knocked out of his shoe?
I don't know.
Objection, Your Honor.
Phrase it differently.
At what point in this case did you learn that Mr. O'Keefe's body was about 7 feet off the street, fully clothed, not undressing himself, and that his sneaker was on the roadway right next to the curb?
Objection, Your Honor. Same page.
So, did you learn that fact?
No,
Next question.
So as you sit here and testify today, you didn't know that?
that's correct.
When you're ruling out car collision in your differential diagnosis, wouldn't it be helpful to know a little bit about the physical evidence of where it was found at the scene?
Again, my focus is injuries. The injuries caused by car accidents, not the scene itself,
Right.
injuries. So that's what I focused in.
A dog wouldn't knock somebody out of their shoe, would they?
Excuse me?
A dog wouldn't knock somebody out of their shoe, would they?
I don't think so.
Okay. When you were excluding car collision as the cause of these abrasions, and you consider circumstantial evidence as a police officer, if there was trace evidence on that shattered taillight, would you want to know about that?
Yes, I would.
Yes. And DNA is a form of trace evidence, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a pretty sound piece of trace evidence, wouldn't you say?
Yes, if collected properly and chain of evidence, yes.
Right. One of the most formidable pieces of scientific evidence that is used in medicine and science, isn't it?
In forensics, yes.
Yeah, forensics. And so when you used differential diagnosis and excluded the car collision as the cause of the abrasions to John O'Keefe's arm, did you know that there was DNA on the taillight of the defendant's car?
I did not know that.
Would you want to have known if there was DNA, particularly would you want to have known if the DNA on the taillight of the shattered taillight was John O'Keefe's DNA? Would you want to know that in your differential diagnosis?
That would be helpful. However, again, that the car accident did not cause that configuration of wounds.
And when you're considering the cause of the wounds and you're trying to rule out car accident, you know that that taillight had been shattered, leaving glass and jagged edges. If you had known there was John O'Keefe's DNA on that taillight, would have you wanted to have taken a closer study of the taillight casing and the broken glass?
I don't think it was necessary. Those wounds are so characteristic of a dog attack.
Do you know there was other trace evidence on the back of Miss Reed's car that morning?
Such as?
Hair?
No.
You didn't know that one of John O'Keefe's hair was left on the bumper?
No.
Okay. And engaging in your differential diagnosis, considering the mechanic of injury, wouldn't it be important to know that the trace evidence coming from John O'Keefe was left not only on the defendant's car, but in the particular area where the damage to the car, the taillight?
Objection, Your Honor.
Were you aware of that fact, Dr. Russell?
No.
Next question.
When you were excluding a car collision as the cause, did anybody share with you the digital forensics, the black box information showing and demonstrating where the car was, the speed it went back and the distance? Did anybody share that with you?
No.
Did you know that John O'Keefe had a cell phone?
Not surprised.
And do you know that at a certain point when that car left, his cell phone, which was found near his body, never moved? Did you know that?
I read that, yes.
Okay. And when you were using differential diagnosis and thinking about the potential causes of the abrasions in the arm, did it seem important to you that all these facts coincided? The car reversed, the damage, John O'Keefe on the ground, the phone under him.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that question.
Did you consider those things, Dr. Russell?
As I mentioned earlier, I considered various possibilities of a car accident, a pedestrian accident, I should say. And I went through many scenarios in my head, and no car accident scenario could create that configuration of wounds that's on the arm.
You've done advanced studies on wounds related to car accidents and broken taillights?
I've seen thousands.
Oh, no. Have you done any studies? Do you have any journals that you rely on to say that there's a expected pattern that's going to happen when a taillight intrudes through a sweater and into one's skin?
Yes, there are many textbooks that I have relied on.
Okay.
It's a fundamental area of study in forensic medicine and emergency medicine. And in fact, the examination of the exterior of the body in a motor vehicle accident case is emphasized and special lectures are given about that topic to the forensic doctors.
You never examined John O'Keefe's body.
By photographs, yes.
You never examined his body.
Personally, no.
No, personally, you never examined his body.
I never touched his body. I examined
No,
the photographs
no,
that
you
were taken in the hospital and in the coroner's office, medical examiner's office.
When you're treating at the hospital and people are coming in telling you there was a dog bite, you're relying on that reporter's history, aren't you?
Usually, yes.
Or an eyewitness who saw it and told you about it.
Correct.
When I asked you before when we were here the last time about any cases where you had to make a diagnosis without information, you couldn't point to one. I asked you to give me one example, and you couldn't give me an example, could you?
I don't remember patients' names.
And so when you rely on the reporter as a medical expert, you take what they say, right, and you assume it's true.
Oh, not always. No.
I see. You
No,
look and see if it's
absolutely
not.
Objection,
One,
Your Honor.
excuse me. One person speaks at a time.
Please.
Let her answer, Mr. Brennan.
No, I don't always take what they say as true because there's many reasons why people do not tell the truth.
Did somebody ever come in and say it was a dog bite and you did differential diagnosis and pattern recognition analysis and determined they were lying, it was not a dog bite?
No.
In all the hundreds, thousands of cases, never has anybody reported to you a dog bite and you determined independently through your powers that it wasn't a dog bite.
Not dog bites, but other wounds, gunshot wounds, stab wounds,
Yeah.
many other kinds of wounds. People report that they occur a certain way, and actually they have occurred a different way.
With respect to dog bites, every time you've treated a patient, they've either told you what happened or somebody with them has told you what happened.
Or they didn't know what happened.
Okay. In this case, when you were excluding the collision as the cause of the abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm, did you look at witness statements?
As far as I know, there were no witnesses to the event.
Okay. Well, did you read the testimony of Officer Sarif? Because the witness who talked to him was Karen Reed. Did you read that?
Objection, Your Honor.
So ask the question differently, Mr. Brennan.
Okay. Did you know that Officer Sarif reported that Karen Reed said, "This is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this." Did you consider that or know about that when you made your differential diagnosis regarding the collision?
At some point, I did know that there was a statement like that.
Well, not like that. Did you know about this statement? "This is all my fault. This is my fault. I did this." Did you know about this statement?
Objection, Your Honor.
Did you know that statement? I'm allowing the question.
No.
Let's move on.
Did you know
Mr.
about the statement to Mr. Flamati? I hit him, oh my God, I hit him." Did you know about that statement?
Not that statement, no.
Did you know about the statement that she repeated repeatedly, "I hit him, I hit him"? Did you know about that?
I learned that there was some question about whether there was a statement or a question, did I hit him? I learned that. But that doesn't, I mean,
Where
okay,
did you learn that from?
I don't remember.
Okay. You said that you had experience in domestic violence cases?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that it's reported that the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe got in an argument shortly before this happened?
Yes, I know that.
When you were considering the cause of these injuries, did you consider Ms. Reed's statements herself to not just witnesses, but to the public, to national magazines and programs? Did you consider any of that?
I don't read the national magazines.
Well, would it help you if you knew she told Boston Magazine that maybe John hit the back of her car, telling her to stop, and then she ran over his foot, or she clipped him in the knee, and in his drunkenness he passed out? Would that help in your differential diagnosis?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
It wouldn't help because those wounds were caused by a dog.
Well, if you believe that statement that she said about running over his foot and clipping him, it would help you conclude that it wasn't a straight-on accident, that it was on the side, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
Even if it were on the side, the car did not cause those injuries.
And we talked about when someone's hit on the side, they could brace or defend themselves, correct?
Oh, correct.
Right. And did you know that if John O'Keefe was standing up and his arm was bent, it would be about the same height as that taillight?
Yes, that I understand. I've been hit on the side. I know about side injuries, side swipe injuries.
Yeah, a clip. It's different, right? And so knowing that his height matches up with the taillight, what other evidence would you want to know before you excluded the taillight as a cause of injury? To be thorough, what else would you want to know?
Well, see pictures of the fragments of the taillight, which I eventually did, and were there any pieces of metal that had the configuration, anything that could cause those parallel lines with the punctate injuries in between?
How about taillight fragments?
Yes.
Little pieces of glass, right? When glass shatters, it shatters randomly, doesn't it?
Well, it depends on what kind of glass. So,
How about, I'm sorry, please.
it depends on what kind of glass.
I want you.
Well, motor vehicle glass, a lot of motor vehicle glass is tempered glass, and that shatters a certain way
Okay.
and creates a characteristic injuries.
Okay. Tell me about your experience in Lexus rear taillight coverings. What is the pattern injury on that?
I'm not aware of any pattern injuries.
And are you aware when the rear taillight of a Lexus breaks, the different pieces it breaks into? Is it random, or is there a standard in how it breaks?
I'm not sure, but I have an idea.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you look at any photographs of the scene in the debris field showing the different size taillight fragments at the very scene where Mr. O'Keefe was found on the ground? Did you look at any of those photographs?
I attempted to, but I couldn't see much detail.
Okay,
Photographs were not good.
Okay, so you don't really have a command of what the debris field looked like relative to the taillight fragments that were on the ground that morning.
Again, I imagine various scenarios of what broken glass and taillight would look like, and again, I could not come up with any scenario that would cause those parallel marks and the pattern that we described.
Well, I don't need you to imagine a scenario. I only want to talk about one scenario. That's the scenario that led to the death of Mr. O'Keefe that morning. That's the scenario I'm asking you about. And the debris field that actually existed that morning. So what I'm asking you, when you engage in differential diagnosis and you take the position that this couldn't have happened, I need to understand what you actually know about the physical evidence that's at the scene. So that's what I'm going to ask you about, that scene. If you don't know, it's okay. But I want to ask you about that scene that morning. Do you know how many pieces of taillight were found on the ground where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
No.
Do you know the shapes and sizes of the shattered parts of the taillight that were found in that debris field where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
I've seen a picture of various pieces of taillight, yes.
And if you've seen that, you would see that there are a number of different pieces of shattered taillight, yes?
Correct.
Of different sizes,
Yeah?
of different shapes,
Uh-huh.
different diameters, right?
Yes, they're irregular, very irregular.
Different, irregular.
Yeah.
Irregular. Many of them sharp,
Yes,
perhaps almost all of them. Yes?
possibly, yes.
Well, you say possibly because you never actually have looked at the physical evidence, you just looked at a couple of photos.
I looked at photos, correct.
And as far as the housing for the taillight, what is that made out of?
I believe it's made out of a plastic, and there's a metal around it.
It's metal.
Yeah.
What's the shape of the metal around it?
What's the shape?
Yeah, what is it, when you're describing the metal that you saw, what does it look like?
Well, it looked like there was some curves in it.
Curves?
Yeah.
Any straight lines in it?
Yeah,
Yep. Any jagged parts of it from the breaking?
yes.
Okay. And inside, were there other parts other than just the casing, like wires or metal sticking out?
Yes.
How many pieces?
I don't know how many.
Okay. Did you ever measure those angles or study the angles of the pieces of metal and the casing?
No.
And you never studied the angles or took measurements of any of the shattered taillight, did you?
No.
Okay. Now, sharp objects can cause puncture wounds, can't they?
Yes.
Sharp objects can go through clothes and tear a... No, let me finish. You can answer. Sharp objects can puncture a hole through something like a sweater, can't they?
They can.
And if that object comes back out, it can pull the threads back out with it, couldn't it?
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah. And a sharp object, like glass, can poke or push a hole in a tear in a sweater and then rub up against the skin, causing an abrasion, couldn't it?
And, well, yes. Yes.
And if the glass and the angles and the shattering is irregular, it could cause irregular type abrasions.
Not like that pattern, no.
But that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, can irregular glass that penetrates a sweatshirt or a sweater and rubs up against the skin, can it cause irregular looking abrasions?
Yes.
And if there's two pieces of metal or glass that are straight, could it cause a linear abrasion?
Yes.
Would you agree with this statement? In a car accident, linear wounds are most commonly caused by contact with shattered glass from the windows, particularly tempered glass, which breaks into small, sharp shards that can create linear cuts on the skin when the body impacts it during the collision. These are often referred to as dicing injuries in forensic medicine.
Yes, and so they're not really very long, linear. They are tiny, linear abrasions or lacerations.
Abrasions come in all different sizes.
Right, but the ones that are caused by tempered glass are very, very characteristic.
Does glass cause a slicing pattern?
It can.
And it can cause a linear abrasion.
Yes, but there's a specific pattern with tempered glass.
I understand that you have an opinion.
Oh, no, it's fact.
Okay.
It's in textbooks.
Yeah, it's in textbooks that glass can cause linear abrasions.
The tempered glass pattern is in textbooks.
Okay. Glass from this broken taillight could cause linear abrasions.
That probably, yes, I agree.
Okay. So the glass that was in this debris field that you got a little look at, it had sharp edges, some of it, right? Yes?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
imagine so. I don't know for sure.
Okay. Do you know if it had parallel edges?
Parallel?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, when you're looking for trace evidence to see if something caused an injury, you look for remnants of that evidence, don't you?
Yes.
In this case, you didn't do any study of the clothes, and you didn't do any study of the actual Mr. O'Keefe's body, right?
I did not have hands-on
Okay.
study. Correct.
But you did learn that there was something remarkable in Mr. O'Keefe's sweater, didn't you?
Can you be more specific?
I can. Glass shards, or broken taillight plastic shards, you understand they were found in Mr. O'Keefe's sweater, right?
Doesn't surprise me.
Well, I know it doesn't surprise you, but the question I'm asking you is, when you decided to engage in differential diagnosis and you decided to exclude collision as the cause of this abrasion, didn't you want to know all the facts and information in considering whether it was the taillight that caused the abrasion? Didn't you want to know that information?
Yes.
Okay. And when you were considering that information, did you know from the criminalistics reports that shards of that broken taillight were littered in his sweater?
I did not know that.
When's the first time you learned of that?
Right now.
Right now. And so when you've prepared for this case and you've received materials from the defense, nobody has ever sent you, ever, the criminalistics reports that show taillight shards were in his sweater where the abrasion was. No one ever showed you that?
I don't recall seeing that at all.
Oh, boy. Well, talking about being a detective and using circumstantial evidence and trace evidence, I want you now to consider this new evidence that you didn't know before you testified at the voir dire in the trial in the first Lanigan hearing.
Objection,
I want you
Your
to...
Honor. I'm sorry.
So let's hear the question first.
When you were ruling out the taillight as the mechanism of injury, when you excluded it in your differential diagnosis, and you said to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that these injuries that you looked at were caused by a dog bite, now that you know that there's a debris field of shattered taillight right near the body of Mr. O'Keefe. And now that you know, in his very sweater, with the abrasions, the same arm under them, is littered with shards of taillight from that Lexus. Does that in any way change your analysis in your differential diagnosis, excluding the car as the mechanic of injury for that abrasion?
Objection, Your Honor.
So I'm going to allow that minus the police officer part, the detective part.
No, it doesn't change my my conclusion that those injuries, those abrasions, were caused by a dog bite.
How do you think the shards of taillight got into his sweater?
They could have got into the sweater from an accident, correct?
From an impact with the taillight, yes?
Could be.
Right. And when the taillight breaks and there's jagged, irregular, linear, sharp edges from that break, what do you think is going to happen to the skin when those shards impact the skin?
They could cause injury, yes.
They could cause puncture wounds, couldn't they?
Yes, they could,
They could cause scratches, couldn't they?
but not in that configuration.
I need to ask you the question so you can answer my question. They could cause scratches, couldn't they?
They could cause scratches.
And you have no studies on how abrasion looks after an impact with a taillight that is shattered. You don't have any studies or comparative analysis there, do you?
I have no studies. I just have my years of experience.
You know what wasn't found for trace evidence in that sweater? DNA of a dog.
I understand that.
You know when dogs bite, saliva, foam, sweat in their mouth, correct?
I also understand that there were issues with the collection.
Well, we're going to get to your claims and see if there's any basis for it, but that's not the question I asked you, but I will invite you to talk about that in a second. Looking forward to that. What I'm asking you, you know when dogs bite, they can froth at the mouth,
Yes,
sweat,
probably.
yeah, saliva,
Saliva, yes.
right? And when they get active and aggressive, it increases the production of those viscous materials, doesn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, it's in some of those studies and reports and books you've studied all these years, isn't it? That that's exactly what happens?
That they increase their production
Yes.
of saliva? No, I haven't seen that, but
Okay.
it makes sense.
And so when the dog bites a person, if they're biting through material, that saliva naturally could be embedded in the material, couldn't it?
Could be, yes.
Yeah. And something like a sweater, right? It traps liquid, doesn't it? Been out in the rain in the sweater. You don't want to wear a sweater in the rain. You'd be soaking all day, right?
That makes sense,
Yeah.
yes.
There was no dog DNA found anywhere on the holes in that sweater, was there?
No.
You understand that the crime lab took swabs of every one of those holes, right?
I don't know how many holes they took, but
Well,
yes.
before you
multiple.
discount or allege a conspiracy about DNA taint, wouldn't you want to know what they did before you criticize them?
I know that they took swabs.
Okay. Do you know that they took swabs of every hole?
No.
Do you know that they then packaged them and they tested and they sent them to UC Davis?
I know there was an interval of time
Well,
between the,
people are exonerated.
Your Honor.
Hold it, I just need to hear the answer. Next question, please.
People are exonerated decades after they've been wrongfully convicted based on DNA. Yes?
yes,
DNA lasts for a long time sometimes, doesn't it?
it can.
Okay. And so you know that the DNA or the samples that were swabbed from the sweater was sent to UC Davis. You know that.
Yes.
And you know when they did the analysis, there was no dog DNA,
Right,
right, on any of those holes.
right.
And you've opined that these are bites, teeth going in and out of those holes all the way up and down the arm.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, it is remarkable that there is no dog DNA on any of those holes in the sweater, isn't it?
Again, there's an issue with the collection and transportation of that.
I'd love to talk to you about that. We're going to, but you got to get through my questions first. It is remarkable as a doctor, as a scientist, that there is no dog DNA in any of those swabs or holes. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Remarkable would not be the word I use.
Extraordinary.
No, I disagree.
Hard to believe.
I disagree.
Okay. Now, there is no dog DNA. Do you think somehow that hurts your cause or your case, for your opinion?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Do you think that somehow challenges your opinion that there's no dog DNA?
No.
Because many times you've interrupted and tried to talk about a suggested or a supposed taint that doesn't exist. And I'm just curious, why is it so important for you to discount why is it so important for you to discount the fact that dog DNA does not exist on any of those holes?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
I'm aware of the many of the steps that are involved in the collection, preservation, transportation of evidence. And there are multiple places where that can go wrong. So the absence of the evidence is not as remarkable as the presence of the evidence.
What training and experience do you have with regard to DNA evidence? Your answer, not very much. Does that still stand today?
Correct. I've had lectures, but, I'm not a DNA person.
Not very much, right? And so now you're suggesting, without any fact, that many things could have gone wrong.
Absolutely, with any specimen.
Right. So you're willing to come into court and just float an idea without a good faith basis or fact?
Objection, Your Honor.
Assistant.
What went wrong in the collection of this DNA? What went wrong in it?
I can't tell you what went wrong, but I can tell you that there were possibilities that there were errors at various steps.
Okay, well, if you want to claim and allege an error to demean or discount the evidence, tell us what the error was that happened with the production, the preservation and testing of this DNA. What was it?
I can't tell you the exact error, but first of all, the decedent was in the snow for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it may have washed off some of the evidence.
What evidence do you have that it washed off?
I don't have any proof, but you asked me possibilities.
No, I didn't ask you possibility. You're raising possibilities. I'm asking you what evidence, what fact do you have that DNA was degraded or taken from that sweater because he was lying in the snow? What evidence do you have?
I don't have evidence. I'm considering different possibilities.
Uh-huh. What about the preservation of it? What evidence do you have before you make such a claim that somehow there was an irregularity or a taint? What evidence do you have that there was something about the accumulation of this evidence, this item, that was tainted?
I didn't say, or I didn't mean to say, that there was a definite error in the process. I'm telling you that there could be. So that's why a negative finding is not all that remarkable.
When you're in a courtroom, you know as an expert witness and as a doctor, you can't speculate. That's not a reasonable degree of medical certainty, is it?
I'm telling you, with a process, just like, when blood is drawn from a patient, for instance.
This is coming from somebody who says they don't know very much about DNA. You're floating an idea that you have no factual basis for.
I'm talking about a specimen in general.
I'm not
It doesn't have to be DNA specimens. Specimens in general there can be errors in the process.
But we're talking about DNA here because you brought it up last hearing. You suggested that there was an irregularity at the last hearing.
There could be. You asked, for an explanation why DNA was not found. Well, that's a possibility.
So when you're using words like something could have gone wrong, you're not suggesting in good faith and in fact that you believe something went wrong, are you?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow it. Are you suggesting that, Dr. Russell?
I'm suggesting there's a possibility that something could have gone wrong.
Oh, but you can't tell us what that was.
No, there are multiple steps.
Tell me one of the steps that went wrong. Tell me anything.
No, I can't tell you definitively that anything went wrong on a particular step. I'm telling you that there are multiple steps where error can occur. That's all. So, and any physician, even not only scientist but physician, knows that that not all test results are 100% accurate.
All right, let's wrap this up. So
Okay.
you've been through the UC Davis report.
Yes.
You've been through the now you know there's a criminologist report and they swabbed all the holes, right? There is an absence of dog DNA. We agree about that, right?
That's what you tell me.
Right. And we also agree that you have no actual science, medicine, or fact to suggest that there was anything wrong whatsoever with the collection, preservation, and testing of this dog DNA.
I have no evidence. That's correct.
Okay. I want to now turn to the actual exhibits and photographs and ask you some questions about the photographs and about some of the statements you've made prior about those.
Okay.
Okay? Can I have Exhibit 5, please? You've seen this exhibit before.
Yes.
You've testified about it a number of times.
Yes.
And you understand this is a photograph of Mr. John O'Keefe's right arm?
Yes.
You've described different abrasions on that arm on different dates in court, haven't you?
Yes.
I want to start from the left to the right. And although we haven't used numbers, I'm going to characterize it as a number so we know which wound we're talking about, so that we can discuss the different statements you've made about each wound. The wound closest to the shoulder, you see that wound?
Yes.
I'm going to call that wound number 1, if you don't mind.
Okay.
When you look at the wound closest to the shoulder, is it fair to say that you've given different versions or statements about what you think was the cause of that abrasion?
Not that I'm aware of.
Remember testifying in the voir dire in this case when you first came in before the trial?
Yes.
And you described that that is a pattern, saying there are 2 wounds with perhaps potentially a scratch in the middle?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember saying in that voir dire that they were consistent with teeth marks?
With teeth marks?
Yes.
I believe I do.
And do you remember when you first testified in this case at the voir dire, you said they could also possibly be consistent with nail marks?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were looking at this, and isn't this an example of no methodology in dog bite science? Because when you're looking at that, there's a very big difference between what teeth would have caused and what nails would have caused, isn't there?
No.
No. Teeth on a wound start with a puncture and then pull down, or the bottom teeth puncture and then pull up. Is that fair to say?
Not always.
And a nail, a dog's nail, shaped kind of like a horseshoe, right? The nail. And so when it pulls, it's going to leave a very different pattern than a tooth, isn't it?
Not necessarily. It depends on how deep the contact is between the nail or the tooth and the skin.
Suffice to say, when you first testified under oath about wound number 1, you expressed uncertainty whether it was teeth or whether it was nails.
Yes.
Okay. And so you didn't have any standard criteria to look at the wound to try to match up a comparative analysis. There's nothing specific where you would have a standard where you would say, well, this is what I would need to determine it's a nail, and this is what I need to determine it's a tooth. You didn't have that, did you?
There is none. And in the literature, authors have mentioned that it's very difficult to tell the difference between a claw wound and tooth mark sometimes.
When we look at wound number 1, when you originally said it was either teeth or nails, You then testified at trial, and you said the same consistent thing at trial, that this could either be teeth or it could be nails.
Would you repeat that?
Sure. After the voir dire, where you said that this wound, number one, could have been caused by a dog's teeth or a dog's nails, you then testified a few days later at trial. And you said the same thing, didn't you, that this wound could have been caused by teeth or nails.
May I look?
You don't remember?
It sounds right.
Okay. Well, I want you to look and be sure. It is trial transcript, page 20, line 3. Thank you. Same answer. Page 20. Start line 3. Yeah, right there. Okay. Dr. Russell, do you have the same transcript as us?
Yes.
Okay. When you were talking about the number of patterns, you started with the upper part of the arm, you talked about the parallel lines, and you said they were inflicted by either teeth or claw marks.
Line 3?
Well, start at line 3. Teeth or claw marks is actually line 5.
Line 5 says the word photographs here.
Okay. You must have a different version than us. May I have a-
Are you talking about the trial?
I am, so you have a different copy than we do. My apology.
20, line 3?
Now, I'm going to have to show my copy only because there's different versions of the transcript going around.
All right,
And it's not going to reconcile.
what I have that Mr. McDermott copied on the trial transcript is what you just read from page 20, starting at line 3.
And that's what we have, but it's not the copy that Dr. Russell has. So if the court would allow me, I'll show her my transcript.
All right, I thought Mr. McDermott's copy went to Dr. Russell. Okay. Sure, go ahead, Sherry.
If I may, I believe one copy has the sidebars and one copy does not.
Okay.
That's what I think the discrepancy.
Okay.
Do we have a second copy of this trial transcript that I can give her? Thank you. Here you go. So at trial, you similarly said that this was caused by either teeth or claw marks.
Yes.
Okay. And so there was obvious uncertainty by you whether this was teeth or claw marks when you testified at the voir dire and when you testified before the jury at the first trial.
Yes.
You told counsel when you had your direct examination on the last case that between the time of the trial and between your testimony at the first hearing in this Lanigan hearing, you had not reviewed any further materials.
No, I don't think I said that.
Oh, you did review further materials,
In the process of writing my report,
which Mr. Lisi helped you with, yes?
Objection, Your Honor.
in the process of writing my report, I did review articles. I re-reviewed the photographs, and and my opinion even became a little clearer.
So when you testified in front of the first jury, expressing an expert opinion, you weren't very clear?
No, I was certain that these were either teeth or claw marks.
Okay. But things have evolved, haven't they?
Yes, I have. In the course of reviewing and also being challenged, I'm being challenged. So I needed to re-review everything. Yes, things have evolved.
So things have changed.
Changed? No.
Well?
It's one of the. I said teeth or claw marks.
Well, it's not one or the other. You're supposed to testify with specificity.
Again, in the articles, in the literature, medical peer review literature, it's mentioned that it's very difficult in some sets of marks to determine what's a claw mark and what's a tooth mark.
So based on your reading of the literature that tells you it's very difficult to distinguish, you nevertheless then come into the hearing and you change your testimony and distinguish, because what you said now at the last hearing is this wasn't claw marks. Your position now is that these were teeth marks, not claw marks.
I also mentioned that I saw some punctate wounds up here, these two little wounds up there, and that helped clarify.
That picture hasn't changed since you looked at it before voir dire.
Perhaps I didn't see them the first time. They're very faint.
You made a mistake.
No.
Oh.
Either teeth or claw marks included, both of those.
So because you overlook certain things, your opinion you gave to the jury was not an accurate opinion.
At the trial?
Yes, at the trial.
Is this the trial?
Yes.
This is the trial. It isn't accurate. It's
Well,
either teeth or claw marks.
Well, that's not what you're saying now. Now you're saying it was teeth, not just teeth. You're saying it was canine teeth.
Yes, I believe now
Right.
that they are more likely canine teeth.
Well, you didn't say more likely. You said to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Well-
Is it more likely or is it to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Reasonable degree of medical certainty.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
To a reasonable degree of medical certainty, those are now dog bites.
Those are, teeth marks.
These right here.
Correct.
All right, and to a reasonable degree of...
It's my opinion that to the reasonable degree of medical certainty, those are marks made by teeth.
And the teeth that you claim that these are now made are the canine teeth.
Yes, I believe so.
Well, not you believe so. I want to know if you're certain about this, a medical certainty.
Yes, to a reasonable degree of medical
Okay.
certainty, those are made by canine teeth.
Okay. And so your opinion from the time when you first testified at trial, the opinions you gave to the jury, it's now different.
I don't see it as different.
Okay? What else did you overlook in this wound when you first gave your opinion to the jury? What else did you miss?
I don't think I missed anything. There's another abrasion in the middle.
Well, no, we're not going to move on. We're going to stay right here in one until we're done.
Excuse me.
Staying
I
on
mean,
this-
there's an abrasion right there in the
Right.
middle.
What's that caused by?
It could be caused by one of the incisor
When you,
teeth.
when you say it could be, I want you to use science and not just speculate. How many incisors are on the top row of a healthy dog?
6.
And the bottom?
6.
Okay. And if a dog has healthy incisors that are not irregular, that are even, you know it's not going to have one incisor leaving a scratch and the other one's leaving no mark.
No, I disagree with that. It's very possible. Skin is very elastic.
Mm-hmm.
And teeth are not always the exact same
Right.
height and have the exact same configuration.
And if they're irregular, one's bigger or missing or there's a gap, it could leave an irregular mark. Could.
It could.
But you don't know that. You don't know anything about the dog that is claimed to have caused this wound, do you?
I don't know about his specific teeth, no.
And do you know whether there's any irregularities in Chloe's teeth that would cause this irregular scratch by the incisor in the middle and leave out any other marks?
Even if there were no irregularities, the fact that skin is elastic and that that it could mean that not all teeth made contact.
Do you know anything about Chloe's incisors on the top and whether there's any irregularities or missing incisors? Do you know?
I don't know.
Would it help you to know that?
It'd be nice to know, but
When you say
I don't
nice,
need
when you say nice, is that a medical term of yes? It would be helpful to know that.
it could be helpful.
And so when we look at wound number 1 that you now say is a bite mark, not a scratch mark, caused by canines, how many canines do you think caused these 2 linear lines?
I believe that those are caused by 2 canine teeth.
Okay. So did the teeth start at the top and work their way down, or did they start at the here and work their way up?
I can't say.
Well, wouldn't you, if you're going to say the canine teeth, wouldn't you want to look at the wound and see where the puncture starts and then where it tears from? Wouldn't you want to know that?
You know, excuse me, there is no puncture.
Uh-huh.
There is no puncture in this wound.
Right. And when a dog bites, the bottom jaw with their canines grabs and anchors, and then the top pulls and tears. That's how a dog bite works, isn't it?
Sometimes, if both the upper jaw and the lower jaw actually make contact, but not always do both jaws make contact.
It's a third-prong lever, a jaw, the way it works. It traps and pulls, yes?
If there's contact, yes,
Right. And so
with both jaws.
most animals don't just bite with their top teeth and drag.
It happens quite a bit.
What happens with frogs, right? There's
I don't know anything
vertical in the
about
area.
frogs.
It doesn't
Right.
happen with dogs. Dogs bite and pull.
They try, but they don't always contact with their lower jaw.
Did you look at the underside of Mr. O'Keefe's arm to see if there was any punctures or abrasions as an anchor that would allow the top canines to pull on this?
I did.
Yeah. And what'd you see?
I didn't see them.
And so what would have had to happen in your version of events is that the dog would have had to not create a puncture, but just scrape with its top two canines and not anchor into anything else.
And that happens often.
And you can't tell whether the canine started here or started here.
That's correct. I'm not
Right.
sure.
Well, here is not a puncture, but it's a rounder wound. We're still on wound number 1. The right linear abrasion, it's wider and rounder, isn't it?
It appears to be.
Okay. And this is a little more narrow up here than it is down here.
Correct.
Right? But there's no way the canines from the top mouth could have started here and worked their way down here. There's no way that could have happened, right? Because this arc would mean that the dog's mouth is backwards. The dog's mouth is backwards if it went this way. Right?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're
Yep.
saying.
You see that this here, 2 teeth, if the dog's canines started here and worked their way down this way, they don't line up. They're not even. It's backwards.
It would be an odd configuration.
Well, odd, it would be like Ripley's Believe It or Not. The dog would have to have their teeth the opposite way.
No, I could see how that could happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. And these 2 scratches, there is no puncture, you say. You don't know what direction it's going in. There's no anchor on the bottom. But yet, your opinion is that these are dog bites.
I believe they are, yes.
Based on just simply looking at them, and you've seen something before in your experience that makes you think it looks similar.
Again, based on my 30 years of experience.
But you don't have any comparative sample or any type of model where you're looking at this and matching up particular points of interest with specificity, like a fingerprint, a swirl, or a whirl. You're not looking at this and saying, well, this is endemic of a dog bite or a canine. There's nothing about this that is particular or specific.
The pattern is fairly specific. It's highly specific, actually.
This pattern here
The
can only
pattern
be
of
caused by a...
the whole configuration, the whole arm.
Let's start with this one, though.
Yeah,
There's
but you have
nothing-
to take things in context.
We're going to go through all of them, then we can talk about all of them in context together. Because I know what you said at the last hearing, but I'm talking about these. There's nothing about these that are particular or specific or endemic to a dog bite, is there?
If the arm only had those 2
Right?
abrasions,
Uh-huh.
yes, it would be extremely difficult to say that those were a dog.
Well, it's not difficult. There would be no objective evidence that it was a dog bite. It wouldn't just be difficult. It wouldn't be accurate. There's nothing about these that's just dog bite. There's no puncture. The abrasions consistent here. They're different.
There's a...
Objection, Your Honor.
Part of you shouting objection adds to the overlay.
What would you like to
So
do?
when you start to stand and say object, that's fine. Dr. Russell, you finish your answer, and Mr.
I'm bad?
Brennan, wait until she finishes her answer before your next question.
I'd like to see the court side. It's okay.
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a minute.
All rise to the court, please.
You are muted.